like to welcome everyone to the June 1st, 2010 meeting of the Goffstown Board of Selectmen. And if everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
Thanks, because it would go dead.
Our first order of business will be the acceptance of the meeting minutes. We have two sets. May 17th will be the first set that we'll address. Is there a motion to accept the May 17th minutes?
Motion to accept with corrections.
Oh, okay. Those, May 17th, the ones we didn't correct yet, the Selectmen Devanza had some issues with.
Correct.
Right, we held them off to this
We
week.
held them off till this week.
Right, and we didn't get them corrected.
Okay, so those will get deferred again. How about everyone has the May 24th minutes. Any changes to that?
Just, there are a couple of tenses that are in there that are inconsistent within sentences.
Would it change the substance of the minutes?
No, but
I understand for grammatic issues, but we can probably go back and just change the tense. Past tense and future tense, is that what you're talking about?
past and
Present?
present,
Yeah.
the present should be past so that it agrees with the first tense.
Want to give me the pages, Phil?
I didn't mark it.
Oh, you did, Meg?
Would you like to,
he
we
can
could, yeah, we can have the
Defer.
motion just, I'm not gonna defer, because I just don't wanna defer, keep on deferring minutes, but if we can give the authority to Selectman Devanza just to talk to Sue and have the.
Yeah, it's only
the
it's
ten-
only in a
it's
couple.
only a couple.
A few places.
Any other, so do I have a motion to accept the minutes by Steve? Anyone want to second that? Phil will second it,
With the changes.
with the changes that will be
They're
made
just
to the
tense changes within
grammar
sentences.
issues.
I'm fine.
Okay, all
That's
those in
fine.
favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that is 5-0, thank you. So we will, next week, we'll put the final approval on the May 17th ones.
Who made the motion?
That was Steve, and Phil seconded it.
Thank you.
Next is announcements, and for the most part, I just want to take the opportunity to thank Kent Nolan, who is the commander of the American Legion Post, I think it's 16 in Goffstown. I think I got the number right. If not, I might be mistaken, but did a nice job. All the veterans that participated in the community for showing your support for our fallen heroes, as well as those who are serving right now in the armed forces. So that was it was a very nice parade, and it was nice weather, and all the volunteers that helped out at the end. Appreciate all their hard work. Any other announcements anyone has? All right. Public comment, and seeing none, we're going to skip public comment, and we'll go right into, I should probably let those in the audience know that we're gonna have a relatively short meeting tonight, mostly administrative in nature, and we hope to be wrapping up at somewhere around 6:45 this evening, so the meeting will probably only last about 45 minutes, if that. So with that said, Sue, Town Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your weekly meeting schedule is in your packet. Tonight there's a ZBA, as you said. Tomorrow is HDC and Solid Waste, and Thursday CIP. Your consensus folder tonight includes AP warrants and employee status report for a Parks and Rec summer groundskeeper.
All right, do I have a motion to accept the consensus folder?
So moved.
That is moved by Phil. Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
Selectman Pierce seconds it. All those in favor, say aye.
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 That is 5-0.
Thank you. The assessor recommends a denial of tax abatements, map 3424. Approval of tax abatements, map 2537, 555, 2532, 3229, 87-1-3, 773-4, and 216-7. And report of timber cuts on map 4, lot 6, 25-4, 25-4-1, and 25-4-2.
Do Do I have a motion to accept the
Motion to
assessor
accept the
recommendation?
The assessor's
Do
recommendation.
I have a second?
Yes.
David,
Seconded.
Selectman Pierce seconds it. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor, say aye.
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 5-0.
Thank you. The board had asked to see the lease history and expenses related to Grassmere Town Hall. Enclosed, you have that history. With your permission, the town will offer a 2-year lease with the following adjustments. The share of water bill increases from 25% to 50%. Based on last year's usage, it would cost them an additional $125 per year, and a 4% rent increase, which would equate to about $143 per year.
Motion to accept the
You-
town administrator's recommendation.
We have a motion to accept the town administrator's recommendation with regard to the Mary Lou lease. Is there a second? I will second it. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye.
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 That's 5-0.
And that's all I have for closed session.
Okay. We have a donation of $500 from State Farm Insurance for the 250th anniversary in recognition of Doreen Olson's volunteer efforts on the Budget Committee, and we need a motion to accept that $500
So moved.
donation. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Fournier, Selectman Fournier. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. And we did the lease. Okay, next is, we do have another perambulation update. This one, I believe, is with the town of Hooksett, and
Town of
I'll turn that
Hooksett.
over to you, Selectman Pierce.
Representatives from Hooksett, I and Scott Bartlett visited 3 different sites for granite bounds on the town lines between Hooksett and our town, and made a report, which is in your folder. And with your approval, I'll be sending this report to Hooksett later this week for their signature.
Okay, and for those of you who may not know, this is a requirement, a state law that requires towns, neighboring towns, to review their boundary lines, their markers, every 7 years. And Selectman Pierce has graciously offered to walk those bounds, which is quite a big effort, as well as the reports that have to go out. And so I thank you once again for that. And you would need a motion to accept Selectman Pierce's work and to forward it on to the town of Hooksett for their.
I'll make a motion to accept it, and I do have a question or two.
Okay, we have a motion to accept it and to forward it with a question after. I just need a second for discussion purposes. I'll do that.
It's regarding the missing marker.
Yes.
Did you check to see if the record perambulation, the last perambulation,
Had a missing marker as well.
had it one missing, or was it?
The last perambulation had the marker there.
When we did the last perambulation, was it done by GPS coordinates? Because some of them were in the past.
This bound did not have GPS coordinates established by DPW. I have a printout of all those town line monuments that did have coordinates established. This one did not. I was present at that site with the chief of survey, City of Manchester, who took readings on the site where it bound should have been, as well as many other survey markers that are in the near neighborhood, so that he has enough information to perhaps reinstall it, but that probably should be done by a licensed surveyor. And not for subject tonight, but when I'm all done, I'll probably have a list of 5 or 6 granite bounds that are missing. And that'll be a subject of a future meeting as to what we wish to do about those missing markers, and we can resolve how to go forward from that point. And the one with Manchester is just one of them. It's not so sensitive, because to us, it's simply a point on a straight line. whereas for Manchester, it is a sensitive
Hooksett,
point.
I mean.
Hooksett
Right.
and Manchester.
Right.
For Hooksett and Manchester, it is a sensitive monument because it's a corner of their land.
I guess, when we did the Manchester perambulations with Manchester, Manchester had many of them marked by GPS. That's why I was wondering about that. So they never did that particular one by GPS then the last few times. I'm going back 2 perambulations previous to, so we're looking at 14
Well,
years?
the-
And they
They,
had them.
they may have, because the person in Manchester who does the preambulation is the chief of survey. So undoubtedly, he probably has some GPS-derived coordinates. But that's, I've asked Sue to resolve whether I should be inviting Manchester for a walk in the woods, because technically, they were incorporated after we were incorporated. So by the state law, I'm supposed to invite them for a walk. So,
Okay, I guess I'm confused now. Was Manchester present?
when I did my preliminary investigation of where these granite monuments are, so that I could lead the other towns on a walk, I discovered it was missing. I notified the chief of survey over in Manchester, said, "Do you know this?" He was aware of it being missing, but had not had a crew on the site to resolve if it was actually missing. So he and I went out with a survey crew, and we determined it was, in fact, missing. So, and there's numerous other bounds on the Manchester line that are going to have problems when I do that walk with him. I already know there are a number of bounds that have been in previous years located, and they're no longer there. But that's another time.
All right.
I'm walking with Dunbarton this week, and then I will turn my attention to New Boston. And then after New Boston's done, I'll turn my attention to Manchester.
All right, so we do have a motion on the table to accept Selectman Pierce's report and to forward it on to Hooksett. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
5-0. I forgot, there was a couple of announcements that I skipped over, if I could just go back to those. First and foremost, the one that is pretty important is the town of Goffstown applied for a transportation enhancement grant through the New Hampshire Department of Transportation for the rail trail. And the good news is that the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, New Hampshire DOT, is pleased to inform you that based on recommendations submitted by the Transportation Enhancement Advisory Committee, the Commissioner of the New Hampshire DOT has approved your application for the use of transportation enhancement funds. The Goffstown Branch Rail Corridor is a 4-project improvement sites. The project will be included in the state's 10-year transportation improvement plan. The preliminary engineering is scheduled for fiscal year 2011, next year. The right-of-way is scheduled for fiscal year 2011, and the construction is scheduled for fiscal year 2011. Fiscal years span from October 1st to September 30th. So the total cost of the project is $395,360. The applicant is responsible for matching amount in the amount of $79,072. So, and we will be contacted relative to the project scope and the necessary financial arrangements before any work is initiated. And over the summer, New Hampshire DOT will submit Goffstown's project to the Governor and Council for inclusion in the state's 10-year transportation improvement plan. And if your project has any work scheduled for fiscal year 2011, we will be sending you a municipal agreement prior to October 1st, 2010. So we're in the preliminary stages because it looks like everything is really going to go full bore next year. And then we will, I'm sure we will have, we already have the Rail Trail Committee that's obviously working on this, but I'm sure there'll be other committees that might work. Obviously, our DPW will be involved in some of the engineering and others. Is there any other update, David, since you're kind of pretty informed on this one?
The Rail Trail Committee has turned in some recommendations to the town engineer regarding the exact placement of a proposed crosswalk.
Okay. Those are signalized crosswalks, were they not? Originally?
They are still in the
Right,
plan
as
as
signalized.
pedestrian
Right.
activated
Right,
stoplight, yes.
right, okay.
But DOT hasn't approved the plan yet,
But
just the
Not
money.
yet,
That's-
right, just the money,
Right.
Just the concept has been
right.
in the grant.
When the grant application came before the board, there was some question and discussion about crosswalks and signal lights, and at the
Did we
time.
need to?
And at the time, we said, we're just applying for
Right.
it now, so I'm just reminding so that we have that discussion before we go forward.
Right, and I
You're
think.
gonna have to have a
with-
public hearing to accept the money anyway, so that will all wash out as it gets through
Right,
the
I think,
process.
just to refresh our memory, we had a pretty long discussion about whether or not it was worth the expense of, and the effectiveness of pedestrian signalized intersections, but we went forward with that amount, saying that if the DOT compels us to put it as part of their engineering plan, et cetera, we'd rather have the money there and then back it out than have, all of a sudden, not have enough money, and then I'll be forced to do it, and then we would be left holding the bag in terms of paying for it. Is that an accurate? fairly accurate?
Yes, but I don't think the DOT will compel us to
Okay.
put signals across roads. But I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to get, again, backed into a corner where they do the engineering and they approve the grant based on those plans.
Right.
And then we've accepted it, we have our public hearings, we accepted it, and then we say, well, we have to do this because that's what the plans say we're gonna do. There is supposed to be a discussion about whether or not
Right.
we're doing
There's
signalized
a number of
crosswalks.
milestones to pass. Public hearings will be one about the infrastructure improvements to the town, and as well as the State Highway Department, Department of Transportation, they also have to concur on the modifications to a state highway. And that's another major milestone, too.
And that,
But it's, like Scott said, it's good to have the money protected for the worst-case construction.
Steve, I have you next.
Yes, I do agree with Nick, that's the way I remember the conversation. The second piece is eventually, and this is regarding Parks and Rec, is Rails to Trail, where is it going to fall under? Because at this point, there's always Rails to Trails Committee. I don't know how much involvement is with Parks and Rec, but somewhere along the line,
Someone needs to maintain it.
someone needs to maintain it, police it. Where are we at?
I thought that we had
Where are we
discussions
following
about
under this
DPW.
We
process?
had the discussion that while it's in the construction phase, it stays with DPW, and once it's completed or near completion, that maintenance would turn over to Parks and Rec, with the exception of any big equipment needed to maintain it, and that part would stay with DPW. Be a joint effort.
Because at this point, I'm gonna say that Parks and Rec has known very little about it, or I don't know if the two committees have sat together or when they're gonna get together. But that was one of the conversations that came up at one of the last Parks and Rec meeting. They were discussing Rails to Trails and how, because part of that was when the impact fee money went to that, they started saying, well, where do we sit with this process?
I mean, I personally see it as part of our Parks and Recreation Network. That's how when it's done. That's just
saying,
me.
if
And I
that's-
think, and then my sentiment was, from what I recall, was that during the construction phase, because there's so much dealing with the engineering and bigger type projects, whether it be bridges or culverts, whatever, that it would be a DPW would be there. But once this thing is completed, that it would be maintained by Parks and Rec. So maybe there's need to have more dialogue from Parks and Rec, but if you can at least maybe convey back to them that that's where the board has been on
Well,
it.
I guess I'd be looking more towards, and I agree, I will convey that back, but I'm looking more towards the Rails to Trail Committee needs to be sitting, because part of it, when you say they'll be maintaining it, what does that mean? What does it constitute? What does it cost? I don't think anyone understands, or at least I don't know what this means.
yeah, but when we've broached that discussion in the past, and exactly what you said is why we couldn't have the conversation, because we didn't know what the final plan was what the road surface was gonna be, the widths,
Right.
and what was gonna be the maintenance. So we were waiting to finally get the final plan, so I think we're kinda getting at that point. I mean, there are some sections that are being done piecemeal as things go along, so perhaps it's time to start having that a little bit.
I agree.
Do you want a motion? I mean, what are you looking for? I mean, do you want something official so that?
I don't know if we need something, well, I don't know if we do.
The reason
or
why
not.
I
I'd like to
say
think
that is
the-
because there has been a great deal of he said and she said and memory, and I think sometimes it's not a bad idea. If that's the direction of the board and there was discussion, then I don't think it hurts to take a position saying, this is who will be maintaining it once it is completed. In the interim, it will be DPW. It gives clarity to Parks and Recreation. And if there's a motion needed to, have Parks and Rec work with Rails to Trails to come up with the medium to long-term maintenance budget, because it's gonna be necessary probably in the next 2 to 3 years. It'll need a budget.
Because right now, Parks and Rec is also working with their short and long-term plans, so they're
Right.
trying to figure out what does this mean on the
Right.
financial end.
Phil, you were,
Just a
Yeah.
suggestion, maybe at this point, since we have a selectman that's involved with it, perhaps he can be in with the rail trail committee to kind of find out or put together what we have here, what we have for final design, where we are, put something together that way.
and maybe give a presentation to Parks and Rec.
Well,
Yeah.
to let us know.
Yeah.
And then we can have that
Right.
conversation so we all
I'm-
kind of on the same page.
I'm willing to do that, and I've coordinated with the Director of Parks and Rec to escort him over all 5.5 miles, so he's aware of what has been developed and the future goals for development. And that is a walk to be scheduled. But I concur with Selectman
Scott.
Gross.
Yeah.
While the trail's in development, it's best just to coordinate, we're finding it best to coordinate with DPW for any activity such as pickup of brush or fallen tree that's blocking the trail. That's beyond the limits of a volunteer organization. Then, when the trail is developed, that it's an opportune time then to say, yes, that's a future park for this town, should fall under the park department. But that we should anticipate that date in the future so that the park does have adequate funds to step into the maintenance.
I mean, I think it's fairly safe to say that the fiscal year for this transportation enhancement grant is 2011, but it's October of 2011, which for all intents and purposes means that you're looking at a construction in 2012.
Could,
So in terms of the Parks and Rec, I think the message to Parks and Rec is that you're looking at the earliest you will be responsible for maintaining it probably in the fall of 2012. Because there will be a lot of construction done in the spring of 2012, because the monies will not be available until October of 2011, and odds are you're not gonna be doing major work.
I have a goal of providing to the town's Trail Development Committee a scope of construction that would take place after the TE grant has been accomplished, in order to put a ballpark figure on how much money would be required to finish all the other aspects of the trail besides these 4 construction projects. And then we'd know, do we need to apply for 4 more state grants, annual grants, in order to be done, or is it 6 more state grants? Or is there an opportunity for the town to step up and say, yes, how about 2 more state grants, and the rest will be a project underwritten by tax money? But until we have those ballpark estimates out, I'm happy with the situation as it is right now. Let DPW have a little oversight to help the volunteers, and with the town's Trail Development Committee, we're managing quite fine for the interim.
Do you want that in the form of a motion or something? Does that help you, so that's on the record?
I don't need a motion on it. I just think Parks and Rec needs to get, Rails Trail needs to get together with Parks and Rec. And I think there's gonna be more questions at that time, I expect, regarding dates, times,
All right,
and.
I'm just saying, I
No, no, I'm just
personally
saying
feel
eventually
better
we're
with the
gonna get
motion.
together. All right, go motion.
And you know why? Because there's been a lot of discussion about, we didn't know about this, and maybe they didn't, and I think if it's in the minutes that we took an action,
And some of
we can
those-
at least convey the action to them.
All right, it's a
So,
good point.
to me, I think I'll make it, it'll be a motion to direct Selectman Pierce to present the short and long-term plans for the rail trail to the Parks and Rec Commission, and also advise them that DPW will continue to perform the necessary maintenance on the trail during the construction period. And thereafter, once the trail is nearing completion, it will be Parks and Rec's responsibility to maintain the trail for, their long-term planning decisions. Is that fair?
No, I don't wanna make that.
Only concern
And why
that I-
don't, okay, then what's the problem with that? I'm just curious.
Because you just made a decision to turn the trails over to Parks and Rec.
Yeah? That's what we just talked about for the last 10 minutes.
No, I think that needs to be the decision based on a conversation with Parks and Rec, DPW, Rail to Trail. That's more than just saying, when the construction's done, it's Parks and Rec. How are they gonna handle it? We're gonna hire more people for Parks and Rec? Do they have the manpower to do it? I think I don't have a problem with shortening that motion to having Selectman Pierce make a presentation to Parks and Rec to fill them in on the plan so they're aware of where it's going, and to have DPW provide any support for these construction periods, but I would stop there.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that that's still going a little bit too far in advance, because I think we need to break this down into three steps. Number one is, I don't have a problem with directing Selectman Pierce to have that discussion, put that information together about the trail, the information that we need to know. I mean, do we have a plan for the finished surface of the trail yet? Do we have all these things? Do we know where it is? Where are we in that process? How far are we along? What portions of it have been, what portions are at what stage to get to the final, so that we have basically an update of where we are with this? Once we have that discussion, then I think we can have that discussion and then go forward. We need to meet with Parks and Rec, so that at least we have an intelligent understanding of what we have there, and we can have that conversation.
I support that, and like you said, after that information's been talked about with the Park Commission, it'd be appropriate for the Park Commission rep to be here, DPW, and the Park Department, for input from all three of those to this board, and then this board could make a motion about the long-term concepts.
That's not your motion?
That's
That'll be my motion.
Okay, motion by Selectman Devanza.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Selectman Pierce. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those nay. I'm nay, because I think we can make a decision every once in a while, so. All right, so that's 4-1, motion passes. Thank you, Selectman Pierce. Appreciate that. Next, there was a traffic alert for today, and that was for Elm Street. I guess they're gonna be doing some water shut-offs up until 9 PM, so if you're watching and your water gets turned off between now and then, that's because they're connecting the main for the
It turned brown.
Goffstown Village Precinct, so you might have some slight water discoloration or no water. If you have any questions, call Lee Minnick at the Goffstown Village Precinct at 497-3621. Don't call Town Hall.
Technically, what's going on is the new water main
It's being hooked up.
has been pressurized
Right, yeah.
over the last year by a temporary connection.
Okay.
Today, that temporary connection is being removed, and the new water main is being formally attached into either end of the existing water mains. Then the old water main is out of service.
All right. And the last traffic alert that we have, and that is the Goffstown Sewer Commission announces the start of sewer construction related to the ARA-funded Mast Road Sewer Project, which started today and expected to last until November. Mast Road will be open to all residential and business traffic throughout the day and through traffic each night. Delays should be expected in the work zones only as only one lane of alternating traffic can be accommodated. Daytime through traffic should use the recommended alternate detour routes to avoid necessary delays, and that is provided to you on the town's website at www.goffstown.com. So I would encourage those of you who have internet access to check that out. Or you can call Megan at our Public Works Department at 497-3617, extension 28, with any questions. And once again, with all of the projects that we've got going on with Mast Road and both in Pinardville and here, and there's a lot of different pavement projects going on, thank you very much for your patience. Obviously, we're trying to improve the infrastructure of the community with sewer and roads, et cetera, and water. and that does mean, and then the roundabout, obviously, so that does mean an inconvenience to the residents, and we understand that. Nick, you wanted to add something?
Just a quick, while we're on these public notices, could we have the website updated? There's still a lot of old public notices on our website page.
Now, I know this website is, what's the status of the website?
I delayed Neil reporting tonight because we're having a short meeting, so
Right.
he'll be in here next Monday night.
Okay, when will it be live?
Well, he wanted the board to see it before it goes live.
Okay. So it could be live the day after our meeting, next week, next
Could be.
Tuesday. Could be,
But we have training to do for everyone,
right,
because remember, the goal was to allow each department to update their own web pages.
right.
with this new
But I'm just saying that
software.
the content would be up, whatever we have
All
would
the
migrate
EDC
over.
Yeah, plus EDC had been working on their
Okay.
web pages, so that's drastically changed.
All right, so we've got that done. We'll do some committee reports, EDC, didn't we already do that already?
No, they did meet last week.
Okay,
And they did speak a lot about the website and the GIS and vision portions of it. They also spoke about the Business Expo. They felt it was a good success. There was a lot of conversation regarding that. They were hoping that possibly in the future that the restaurants be able to bring their food there and give out samples, I guess.
and you can, and that was permitted, you could not sell food due to Board of, the health reasons.
I was not there, I'm just
Yeah.
stating that there seemed to be some miscommunication, and I guess some people had put a lot of effort out, restaurants put a lot of effort out, having food prepared, et cetera, at that point.
That's, just to clarify, I was there the
I know
entire
you were.
day, and there was only one business that there was a miscommunication. And I talked to that business owner. That business owner took a spot from somebody else who could not make it. When we originally discussed it with that business owner, there was a miscommunication with one of the committee members, but everybody else did bring samples and.
Excuse me. The other thing that they spoke a lot about was RSA 79E. And Matt Monahan brought that up. It was kind of an interesting concept where essentially where they looked at where you look at older buildings such as we have down in the village where
Tax credits or something.
tax credit in the construction is something that they want to look into. Honestly, it'd be something that'd have to be passed as an article at a town
Right.
meeting.
So essentially, the way that works, if there was a building, and it has to be in in a zone, a particular zone.
Whatever
If they
zone
do
circle.
remodeling, let's say they put in $100,000 worth of remodeling, I think that the
Assessment
The-
stays the same.
the assessment stays the same, even though that, right, for a 5-year, up to a 5-year
to.
period.
Up to 5
Right,
years.
up to 5 years.
And I think you can even put a dollar figure to it also.
So that encourages someone to maybe reinvest in an older building, knowing that they might get a slight tax, will they get a tax?
And my understanding of this is that part of that is that when you do those zones, it can be any zone that you decide
Right.
to decide to red line, and like you say, it could be any dollar figure up to 5 years, and you can do anytime someone does apply, it can change from application to application on the limit, so you can use a lesser amount. Just something that's the
Well,
thought.
this is an important thing that we do have discussion on. Is this something that the board wants more information from EDC in terms of the potential impacts?
I think
Because
that's
this
what
would have to go.
EDC's plan was, right, to
Yeah.
present to the Board of Selectmen,
Okay.
And
the
I think,
packaging it.
and
for
I'll be
them.
honest, we're fortunate, I think Matt Monahan was.
And Matt knows about it.
He knows
pretty
about
well.
it, he dealt with it in,
Another town,
I don't wanna say it's the P-town, anyway, Pittsfield, right? Was it Pittsfield?
Pembroke or something?
No, I
Yeah.
think it was
All right.
Pittsfield, but anyway, but he was very up on it, so part of that was, I think, you'll see more talk about that. And the other large discussion, obviously, was the all boards meeting, and during that discussion, I think a lot of things came up regarding EDC, regarding what tools are available, what direction, how can I assist people, so those are some of the things that are gonna be coming up in the future. And as regarding, how the EDC interacts with other boards, and hopefully more discussion will take place during the old boards meeting.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you, Steve. Conservation,
Conservation met on Thursday evening. There were a couple of presentations. There was a recommendation to the planning board to grant a conditional use to allow a shed construction in the 100-foot wetland buffer based on a favorable site visit. the Fournier landscaping site plan, which came before the board. They're deferring comment until DES has a chance to review there was a complaint of wetland filling, and so they're gonna review that first. Briarwoods was, a subdivision was moved to the June 23rd. The town had the Barnard lot line adjustment before conservation, and they're recommending to the planning board that our final plans identify prime wetlands and the 100-foot buffer, as that'll be a plan of record. So they would like to see those delineations on the plan. So that's their recommendation to the planning board.
On both parcels?
Town parcel. I would my assumption is the town parcel, because that was a conversation centered around the use of the town parcel.
Well, what about the other parcel?
Referring to an existing
I guess the reason
parcel.
why I'm asking that question is, all it is a lot line adjustment. There is no recommendation for any development on the town parcel, yet there's been development on the other parcel.
I understand that we had a plan before us, just before the Barnard, and similar conversation, and the comment was made that, well, this is just for a lot line adjustment, there isn't anything else before us as far as development. But with the Barnard lot, they wanted to see wetland delineation because of the potential gravel, even though that plan wasn't in front of.
Town
I
is
understand what you're, I understand,
exempt from that.
but it would seem to me, before we do any excavation, we have to come up with a plan.
Right.
And that's the time to do that. Because what's gonna happen
We'll
is,
do it again.
what's gonna happen is, we're gonna expend the money to put that on. And let's say 3 years from now, we go forward. You know what the comment's gonna be? You gotta redo it because times went by and things move. So why do we need to spend taxpayer dollars twice? Say, perfect example, we just did a lot line adjustment. We accepted it. It's a lot line adjustment. Conservation reviewed it. Conservation had no comments about it. They didn't request any mapping on that Normandale lot line adjustment, yet they want it on a town parcel.
That was the one we were discussing, the Normandale. The one just before. Correct.
Well, that's their recommendation. The board can or cannot act on it, so.
Right, that's their recommendation
That's their
to the planning board.
recommendation
Planning board, yeah.
to the planning board, and the planning board is merely a courtesy, correct?
No, lot line adjustment.
Lot line
yes.
adjustment is theirs, okay. So that's their
Let
decision.
me just ask, when did what you're reporting on is which
Thursday.
meeting?
Thursday
Conservation.
evening.
This
We
Thur-
met on Wednesday, you met on Thursday.
Last Wednesday.
Okay, because in my packet for planning board, I
Which
had,
will segue to you now then.
yeah, but I'm just wondering if what I'm looking at is a prior one, because when it came to that lot line adjustment, there were no comments from the Conservation Commission on what I had
Correct,
on a Normandale.
correct. We discussed it Wednesday evening, and there were no comments because
And there was no request for any wetlands map.
it was simply a lot line adjustment. There wasn't any request to do any construction, or it was.
But you just said what I said with the town one, that's what I'm missing.
I agree, I brought that
Oh,
point
oh,
up. I made that same
I think
point
you're on
that
the same
evening.
page.
Okay, I
That's-
apologize.
I agreed with you.
I
I agree with you. I made that point that evening.
Okay, I misunderstood.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's almost like listening to my wife and I talk
Yeah, I
sometimes,
know.
okay. Sorry, Tammy, I
apologize.
apologize for that. I'm gonna be in trouble when I get home. Oh, boy. See what you made me do. Next is, planning.
Planning. Planning board did meet Thursday. We had quite a good agenda. One of the items that we had was, as was just mentioned, a Normandale lot line adjustment, which we accepted that to go forward. We accepted waivers also. Then there was a completeness review to construct a shed within the 100-foot wetland surface water conservation district. They actually requested a waiver, planning board to waive it, but the planning board does not have the authority to waive it. They need to go to the ZBA. So we did not accept the application as complete, but we, noting that he needs a variance on that. And or some of our old business, the Anna King Trust subdivision, that was extended, which was approved. There was also an extension to July 22nd, which was the Briarwood subdivision. And we also heard a conceptual hearing for a subdivision on Patty Hill Road, which was in the agricultural district.
Anything else?
No, there was a request to extend the hours of operation at the Gulf Station over here in
Yep.
Mountain Road, and to 11, and we denied that.
Question.
Yes.
Was there any input from the public on that, extending the operating hours for 1 hour?
No, it's not a public hearing, it's just a written request to the planning board,
Mhm.
just an action item.
I just personally find that unusual that they would make that limitation decision.
It was just a written request asking us to extend those hours, and denied unanimously.
You done with yours?
Yeah, pretty much.
Just one issue that if I could just take a step back, it's a conservation thing. I did get a call from Brian Fournier today, and I've had conversations with Sue about this last week, and as a selectman, we're caught in a kind of a difficult situation on some of these things because we have constituents who call us up on issues. We also have a responsibility ultimately to enforce code. So a constituent may have done something inappropriate, and then we have to tell them that they may have done something inappropriate, or they have to go through the process, et cetera. But this particular gentleman called me up today, and his concern was not so much about, the town. He understands that, he did not, there was a period of time where he didn't think he needed a site plan, but then he does need a site plan. He's going through that process. There may or may not have been some issues with regard to development of his property, which I think he said he'll take ownership of that. But his concerns lie more with the fact that he seems to be getting the runaround, from conservation, and more so that he feels that there's something going on, whether it's, just, inappropriate, I guess, conduct. I mean, here's the long and the short of it is that the report out was that they're waiting from a report from DES, okay? And it was supposed to be tomorrow. And he calls me up saying that it got postponed because Collis Adams, who happens to be the wetlands administrator, pulled off the person who was supposed to go there and now has put somebody else on. So I guess my question is that we have a Conservation Commission member who's also a resident of Goffstown, who is also the DES wetlands administrator, who goes over to this gentleman's property, kind of is directing things that are going on in conservation, has the ability and the power because of his position at the state to then subsequently alter who is going to this person's property. And, I'm wondering, and he's asking me, can the selectmen do anything? That's a conflict of interest. I directed him to the DES. I said, if you think it's a conflict of interest, if you think this person is abusing their power, then you should contact the DES commissioner or that person's superior and raise those issues. I don't think that it's in our jurisdiction. That's my personal opinion, but that's not my place to say. I'm just curious as to if I gave the right advice. I don't think it's a Board of Selectmen decision. And I think if someone has concerns, then they should, if it's a DES concern, they should go to DES. Do you think that's accurate? Or is that an issue that is a commission issue where someone is overstepping their bounds? I don't know. Then that might come under our purview. I don't know.
If a state employee is personally involved with an application at the state level, I find it unusual that he is then making a decision at the town level, and maybe he ought to excuse himself. At the
From
town-
either one.
From the town level. State preempts town. He would preempt him, he would excuse himself from the town decision.
Like I said, this gentleman, Brian Fournier, brought that to my attention, and I directed him to DES, saying that if you feel that there is some sort of a conflict and you think that someone is, working the issue, both on a local level and then also addressing it at a state level, if you feel there's a conflict, then perhaps you should talk to that person's superior, and maybe they'll give that person, the advice as to what to do, whether they should recuse themselves locally or recuse themselves at the state level. And I'm just,
I've said
is
my
that, you
piece.
said your piece, anybody else have any,
Moving on.
moving on?
Done deal.
All right, done deal. We have, at 6:45, we have the police chief who's here to talk about the victim's advocate. This is a grant that we have had in place. It was a 6-month grant and one-year grant, I apologize, and now there was a request to extend it for another 6 months. I apologize.
That's all right. I've been in contact, or actually Sue Dearborn from Department of Justice for the state of New Hampshire, who is the grant administrator for this grant, has contacted us. They're impressed with the way in which the grant is going, that it was regionalized, and there is money available for a 6-month extension. The issue that I have before me is that New Boston and Ware no longer wish to participate in the extension of that grant. So they will follow through with the full year, but after that, they do not wish to be part of it. That includes our in-kind match. It's a soft match, that we volunteer hours, we have administrative costs and things of that sort, office space. So without that from them, it's going to be difficult for me to go forward with it. It's not that it can't be done, but
What is the shortfall, I guess, in that soft match time? I mean, because that means that we would then have to absorb, Goffstown has to absorb the volunteer hours from what New Boston and Ware were previously
Correct.
doing. So what are we talking about in terms of per week?
it's not just volunteer, it's the administrative cost. Per week, it's hard to say exactly because it depends on the amount of cases that are coming and going from each
Right.
department and agency. For the most part, we handle probably 90% of all the cases already,
Okay.
so,
Hillsborough County, I believe, is also
Hillsborough
entering into
County
this
is,
with the same individual.
yes. And that's going to be 6 months, up to 6 months after the expiration of our grant,
The 1 year.
yes.
Can we make use of the
Hillsborough County.
Hillsborough County's victim advocate once?
And we've already signed up with that we're gonna take part in that program as part of Hillsborough County.
And then we would then in turn give our in-kind donation.
We would help
to that.
with our services and prosecution, et cetera.
Is it fair to say, though, then, if we extended it on our own, that you have resources that are gonna have to go to this program that would be going elsewhere?
Yes.
I'm confused. When you said at the end of the 1 year grant is ending when?
I believe it's September,
And your request,
August
your
officially.
request tonight is,
to extend it 6 months beyond that.
and when does Hillsborough County?
April or May, they haven't gotten a definite on it yet. But April or May is what they're looking at
So
next.
after your 6-month extension.
After the six-month extension.
So during that 6 months, though, we're gonna have to, there'll be volunteers that you have working on some other project that have to, and or administrative costs that we will have to absorb for the next 6 months.
Correct.
And then we're only gonna get potentially another 6 months through the use of Hillsborough, through their grant.
No, that's not correct. They're looking for a long-term grant.
Okay.
I believe it's a 3-year
Okay.
grant
Right.
All right.
or extended beyond that.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. First of all, what is it exactly that you're requesting from us?
Well, we're looking to see for permission to apply for this grant, or this extension of the grant. I had been before you last year, asking for a one-year grant. We have the opportunity to do it for 6 more months.
Okay, but what I'm hearing is then, what I seem to be hearing, I just wanna make sure I'm correct, that we have some other towns that aren't doing this?
They
Two
will not,
towns.
they will not be partaking in the extension.
Now, is that gonna
portion.
cause an increase to our workload?
For our volunteer hours, yes, it will put more of a strain on the requirements that we have to put forth to meet that match.
Okay. I guess the concern though that I have is currently your department is, there's two issues that I have concerns with. Number one, the department is kind of maxed out. I mean, the amount of work that you have to do, along with the construction projects, along with making sure we have traffic control, along with dealing with all those issues. And the other concern that I have is, especially in the economy, it's tough to get people to volunteer because people, because of the economy, they have to spend their time picking up other things that are tough to pick up.
Yes.
So I just have a concern. I have a
And
pretty big concern.
we do have some volunteers that are presently working in records, however, we're due to hire a new records clerk who will be in training, but they're trying to pick up the slack as far as the filing, et cetera, on that end.
I'm gonna try to speed this up because there's gonna be another hearing or meeting in here at 7, so I wanna try to, yeah, just a couple.
This is a new program we've done for a year. It's gonna pick up in May by the county. Is there great harm in just not doing it for 6 months? I mean, how many cases
We've
is?
had, the exact number I don't have before me, and I apologize for that. She's done a lot of great work for our agency. Will we continue to serve the victims and the witnesses if we didn't have this grant? Absolutely. That's what we're mandated to do. So,
All right, is there a motion? that we
Make
have?
a motion that we don't go forward with it.
Okay,
Second.
there's a motion not to proceed, that's seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion that is not to proceed with the 6-month extension, say aye.
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 All those against?
Nay.
Okay, that is a 4-1 not to proceed. At this time, we're gonna go into non-public session, in accordance of RSA 91A, 3, Roman numeral 2. We're gonna be in for 2. One is for hiring, which is B, and the other one is D, which is land.
Can we add A?
And we'll add.
Compensation.
A is compensation. Right, so we have 3 issues then, okay? Just so the public is aware, the Board of Selectmen is going to go to another room. The Zoning Board of Adjustment is going to be conducting a hearing in this room. Once again, it'll be the Zoning Board that will be taking this room.
Do we know we need a motion for non-public?
Yeah, I needed a motion to enter non-public, and that was for 91A3, that would be 2A, B, and C. We'll start off with B, hiring. So,
So moved.
B.
Seconded.
Second by, you got that? I'll just write that down because Sue's not here. Bill, Dave, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes, okay, unanimous, 5-0, and a roll call was also unanimous. Okay, thank you, and we'll take that.